And in a lot of traditional spiritual systems as they're presented here in the diaspora, the first thing people want you to do is get initiated before they teach you anything. So what I aim to do is to break down a lot of the dogma around that, not to totally to destroy it or discredit it, but to really bring truth to what really is involved in learning and in training and coming into your power.
Great, great. Now, I hear a lot about magic. What is magic?
Okay. Magic is just anything that you utilize to get something done. That's magic. Okay, so instead of buying yourself a rolling pin, if you decide to take an old champagne bottle and use that to flatten out your dough, that's magic. You came up with some way to get something done, whether it's orthodox or it's unorthodox. You used your creativity and your willpower in order to produce a product. So magic is the combination of imagination, also creativity and willpower. This is what magic is. So it's not just pulling rabbits out of a hat or bringing people back from the dead. Magic is Stevie Wonder is magic. How does he come up with these sounds? George Duke, magic. Bringing something from nowhere and bring it into a material place or a corporeal realm. So we're bringing things from nothingness to manifestation. That's a magical act. That's what magic is.
Right. Now, how can we use self-mastery? How can we master using the Orisha? How can we do that?
Okay, well, one of the first things that we always have to do is to recognize that the Orisha are not external energies. One of the differences in the way that I present these energies from a lot of people, and not necessarily difference from tradition. Tradition teaches it this way, but it's gotten confused across the waters because we have an amalgamation of so many different religions. And more specifically, evolutionary energies that is crept in. And then there's so many other Orishas, and you go through each one, and as you're going through each one, you're mastering different components of yourself. The Orisha also correspond to different organs of your body. Okay, so by mastering those internal spiritual energies, you then are better equipped to master the physical aspects of who you are, and also the external projections of those energies. So, for instance, like we spoke about Ogun being the energy of militancy. Well, Ogun is also the energy of iron. Okay, and not that iron is like Ogun. Ogun is necessarily the spirit of, but iron is Ogun. Okay. So by understanding the iron inside of you, Ogun is also an energy that deals with the blood. You have a better understanding of iron and how iron relates to technology, how iron relates to advancement, and so forth and so on. And each Orisha has their own natural element that they correspond to. So mastering yourself or understanding yourself also gives you the ability to master and evolve the natural elements of the planet, as opposed to always being under them, which we often kind of get into when we start even talking about traditional religion. We start thinking that our ancestors worshipped the planet, which wasn't the case. Our ancestors regulated the planet. They regulated the orbit. They regulated the revolutions and how things changed, if there were going to be seasons or if there weren't going to be seasons. And they regulated these things by creating contracts and negotiating those contracts through these energies known as Orisha, which they first master inside of their body. Once you master the rivers of blood inside of you, it's much easier to understand the rivers that run through the planet. Once you understand what the function of iron in your body, it's much easier to understand metallurgy. And once you understand the energies of meditation and removing yourself from your physical thought or from your earthly thought, then it's so much easier to understand the energy of Obatala or the energy of omnipresence, being all places at one time. So that is how we tap into that self-mastery using the Orisha.
And these are things that you teach?
Yes, these are things that I teach at the Sadulu House, amongst other things. I don't necessarily teach that Orisha are the pinnacle, nor is self-mastery necessarily the pinnacle of what we all have our own mission. So the first thing I like to really tap into with my students is that creates an internal war inside. That creates a split personality. There are things that happen. There are atrocities that happen to us and to our loved ones and the people in society, and it's hard for us to understand that that's temporary and it's an illusion. So that creates that internal war, and what that really is, that's the war between God and the devil. Because the devil, or Satan, which is probably a better word to use, Satan or Set represents the material reality. Okay, that's the energy of the root chakra. That's your physical reality. And then above, over at your crown chakra, you have the things that exist beyond the earth. And those two entities not necessarily are at war with each other, because they work hand in hand, because you need them both. You know, all this praying and everything is great, but if you're starving and your roof is leaking and you're not taking care of your physical environment, then just being silly, you know, in a very simplistic manner. So one of the challenges is finding that middle point. A lot of times the battle that people are speaking about is their inability to find the middle point. You have people who will say, well, I'm on God's side. I'm dealing with the angels, light. And that's one side of the polarity. Then you have people who say, well, you know, I'm dealing with this corruption down here. I'm getting money. You know, I'm getting this, I'm getting that. Heaven on earth all day. So these are two extremes of that yin and that yang polarity, or in this tradition we would know it to be Obatala and Eshu. You know, in Christian lore we have God the Father, and the devil or Satan. And these are just two sides of the same coin. And some people mistake that for warfare. Now, there are other forms of warfare after that, or really before that. The first thing that we have to understand is this, is that everything that manifests in the physical world begins first with the seed of spiritual germination. And even prior to that seed of spiritual germination, there's a soul malformity that begins first. So when your soul has some type of injury to it, or it has some type of deprivation that it's dealing with, then that is going to express itself through your spirit. And then your spirit will drive your thoughts and your emotions to do things that reflect that deprivation. These three activities all represent the same thing. And they're a process of coming to one conclusion about something. Because right now we have polarities, and what we're doing is we're melding the polarities into one. Okay, so that is one of the reasons for the spiritual, quote-unquote, warfare. Anything outside of that, I have to honestly say, most of the time it's self-generated. Okay. It's really self-generated.
Okay. Now, we hear a lot about black magic and white magic. Is there a difference?
Yes, there is. Well, let's first start with the social definition. Okay. Now, we know when we talk about black magic, or when some folks talk about black magic, they're typically talking about things that will be classified outside of any orthodox religion. Okay, anything where somebody is actually tapping into their creativity would be considered black magic, or hoodoo is another name for that. Okay, when somebody sits at home and just, thinks of a ritual. Man, this person's really getting on my nerves. I wish they would go away. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write their name on a piece of paper and put it in a frying pan. Fry it up. So it's right. Coming up with stuff like that. So that's one form of black magic. Now, a more academic definition would be this. Black magic, for one, is melanated magic. And white magic deals with the magic of enlightenment, okay, which basically means things that we're coming into the knowledge of, things that we are striving, or rituals that we're doing to strive to come to a higher awareness of, a higher knowledge of, okay, but it doesn't deal with the understanding of things yet. It just deals with things that we're gathering for information gathering, okay. Black magic deals with the magic of corruption. Now, what is the magic of corruption? The magic of corruption is the magic of your flesh, because when you fell down from heaven, if you want to use that term, or you fell from the Akashic realm, you fell into darkness, just like Lucifer. Okay, Lucifer is us. Okay, Lucifer was the light being that fell into darkness. What was the darkness? The darkness is your melanin. So when you're tapping into that darkness or that melanin, you are now performing black magic. Nina Simone is black magic. Jimi Hendrix is now black magic. You out of alignment with you. John Henrik Clark is white magic.
Now, we hear a lot about brainwashing, and I've heard you talk about brainwashing. Mm-hmm. How are we being brainwashed?
Okay, well, there's two different forms here. One of the things that I speak about are brainwashing and mind control. Okay, for the most part, your answer is a perfect example. I mean, your question is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. If we have to ask how are we being brainwashed, then that's mm-hmm. mind control, because brainwashing is blatant. Okay, brainwashing is I'm sitting in a chair, I'm tied to a chair, there's a bright light in my face, and somebody's throwing water on me, and reciting something over and over and over again. It's a force thing. Whereas as mind control, which is what a lot of us are dealing with, is something that's much more sinister, because our perception of the person who's actually doing the work is completely different. When someone's brainwashing you, typically there's a fear mechanism that's being used because you don't have liberty. Okay, whether you're being constrained or whatever, you're confined in some manner, and that's how brainwashing takes place. Whereas mind control, you're giving the illusion of freedom. And you may have liberty, but you don't have freedom, because freedom is a free mind. So when you're dealing with elements of mind control, you're dealing with symbology. You're dealing with sound. You're dealing with taste. You're dealing with everything that affects the five senses. And mind control deals with teaching you that the five senses is the root of all of your understandings, or the root of all of your activities. Okay? So one of the first elements of mind control that are used is something that affects your somatic experience on the planet. So it could be a smell, it could be some music you're listening to, it could be the way something looks, it could be video, it could be movies, it could even be walking through a rectangular door. When you know that every entrance and exit of great importance that you take on the planet deals with at least an oval shape, if not a round womb, it's at least an oval. But we never come in and out of a square and something good is getting ready to happen, because we don't have those type of shapes in nature. So that's one of the first forms of mind control that are used, because it now rearranges the atoms in your body to now align itself with that masculine linear way of thinking, and removes you from, again, that black magic, which we were talking about, that feminine energy, which is dealing with more cyclical, non-linear, abstract shapes and ideas. So we're removed from that. But and some of those same ideas, always, and those same two sides of the coin, is that they miss a lot of the programming that a lot of the other children get. So a lot of times that child who sits in the back of the class and says, "Why are we doing this? This is stupid," and gets kicked out every day, because they say that every single day, because they do realize what we're doing is stupid. It has no applicable relevance in my life, and it never will. They begin to transform, because their investment is not in knowledge at this point. Their investment is in other things: dancing, music, maybe even the complementary sex, and they begin to transform themselves. okay? With unbeknownst to them, they have no idea. But what happens now, through that transformation, the junk food doesn't mean the same thing anymore, because that junk food was designed for a certain anatomy. It was designed for a certain physiognomy. So now that that doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't have the same effect. So they have to keep redesigning the junk food in order to keep up with the evolving or transforming people who live in the inner cities. Because based on food, sure, people are suffering from some heavy physical ailments, but there's a lot of people who grow up on that garbage and don't. There's a lot of people who eat that garbage every day and are still on track fields and football fields breaking records. You know, because this is a transformation that's going on. So that's why that's so critical, tapping into that white magic and that dark magic alike.
Wow. Now, all of these and other things you teach. Now, you say you have an online teaching or a physical place where people can go, or both?
Oh, well, I do both. Yeah, I have the online school. And again, like I said, initially I was mainly teaching in person. You know, I've been doing that for many years. And this tradition one of the traditions that I'm in, one of the things that happens is when you get some of the higher level initiations or degrees, we could say, is that you're then allowed to take on people under you. And they call those godchildren. So you become, for me, I would be the godfather, and then my godchildren. And you basically, you know, you're like a surrogate parent. You know, you're able to establish what's called an ile, and the ile means house. And in that house, you create a family structure. Now, one of the reasons that this was necessary in the diaspora is because when we came over here, families were disbanded and fragmented. So the creation of a home allows someone to do that, but I also have the online classes, which are very accessible. People can go to the Sadulu House to sign up for classes. So, you know, I do that so everyone can get in. There's really no excuse. And but on top of that, I also do lectures and I do hands-on workshops and I also do one-on-one classes as well.
Okay. Now, earlier you were talking about soulless people, and you know, they talk about that we have people that walk around with chips in them, and they dealing with half humans and half machines. So how can we tell if we're dealing with a person with a soul or a soulless person?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is this. You know the truth by having the truth inside of you. Okay? So if you have a soul, then what happens is that you first feel that connectedness with a person. Because through your soul, if we look at it like this, if we look at the Supreme Being as a spider, right? And this spider shoots webs off. And each web that it shoots is an individual soul. But in reality, they're all connected because they're all a part of this big giant web, right? So when you meet someone who doesn't have a soul, one of the first things, and this is what why we have to learn not to ignore intuition. One of the first things is you don't feel any connectedness. You don't feel any warmth. You know, when you meet someone who has a soul, you can feel it. You can almost even feel yourself wanting to be near them. You can feel them wanting to be near you. You can feel this slight pull, you know. And I would kind of urge listeners to focus on that, you know, especially in mate selection. You know, sometimes people end up with a soulless person and they don't find out till later, and they find out through action. You know, how could you do something like this? You know, because they don't have a soul. They don't have the same moral compass that you do. You know, so it's really, when you're dealing with that, the best way is it's a feeling. You know, now there are some scriptures, if we read the Kabbalion or the Book of Thought, you know, you can read some of the old scriptures, the ancient scriptures, and it speaks about people who were actually created without a soul. So you can get in that if you want to do the academic piece to it. But the fact that you have a soul, and if you're feeding your soul and you're tapping into your soul, you immediately know. You don't even have to touch a person. You'll know when someone comes into a room and they're empty, the same way that a child knows who to walk over to and who not to. You put a child in certain people's hands, all they want to do is cry. Because they just came
and
from
then
that.
we
they
have to react to that or battle them, or however you want to phrase it. Isn't that a battle there?
Oh, that certainly is a battle, but what it more so is, it's natural selection. It's evolution, and sometimes evolution has to occur through the introduction of harsh conditions. So if someone is using their soul to battle me and coupling that with technology, then that means those are things that I have to learn to do in order to defend my homestead. But my thing is I'm going to do it better. Whatever you want to do, I'm going to do it better because I have all of this power inside of me. And part of my life journey is learning how to regenerate more power, how to get more prana, how to get more chi, how to get more ashe. Okay, so really what it boils down to, let's say, for instance, if two people were tapping into the same energy, let's say if we'll just use the energy of fire, right? Now, I got energy of fire, the next person has the energy of fire. We're going to both tap into it, and we're going to go to war. Well, who's going to win? First thing we could say, well, the person who has the greatest will and intention to win is going to win. Whoever has the most willpower. Well, let's say if our willpower is equal. Then it now boils down to whoever has the most fuel in their tank. Now, there's some things that deplete your fuel. Stress, for one, depletes what we call ashe. In this tradition, ashe is power. But there's different forms of ashe, such as ogigi, which is electromagnetic energy. Okay? Now, there's ways that, and that electromagnetic energy exists inside of your shadow and in your aura. Now, there's ways to deplete your aura. Your aura is depleted through psychic attack, through stress, through neglect of your soul energy, poor breathing methods, poor water, poor food, poor sleep habits. The introduction of all these things will remove that fuel from you, and you will lose that fight. So sure, it is a battleground if you so choose to engage in it. But really, it's about survival of the fittest in many senses, and those who are fit to survive will be those who are ready to transform and evolve. And part of the people who listen to your show and the people who listen to my show and who take classes, these are the people who are in the head of the proverbial snake, as we'll call it. In the Voodoo tradition, we have Dambala. Most of the definition of individual child is special people, special children who have special talents. Well, most people would say that about their children, unless they have a complete dud. You'll find especially autistic children would really highly classify as the indigo child. And really with the indigo idea, the indigo child idea, it was something that was brought about so that there would be a new classification for children. So instead of calling them unruly, autistic, or rebellious, we could say they're indigo children. They come through with a sense of knowing and a sense of purpose. But again, this is a cookie-cutter idea that all children should have. Every parent should have the cookie-cutter idea that this is an indigo child. This is a child that's going to tap into past lifetimes and that's going to transform and be the next step in evolution for our bloodline. That's an indigo child.
I have another person on the line. Area code 313-977.
Yes, I have a question. How are you guys this evening?
Good evening. Wonderful.
Great. Good evening.
I wanted to know who can you chant to or who can you call on in this work faster, as in probably like getting a job.
Okay, you said who can you chant to or call on for getting a job?
Yes, faster, yes.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First off, the most powerful entity and spirit that you can call on is yourself.
Okay.
There's no more powerful entity, and tradition tells us that nothing happens without Ori. Okay, so you always want to start with self. Okay, so what you want to do, first off, let's start here. You have to make sure that whatever job it is that you're desiring, it's in alignment with your purpose. Because sometimes you'll have certain things blocked because you're being orchestrated and positioned into doing what you're really supposed to do, as opposed to, well, my unemployment is getting ready to run out. I need to get myself a gig. Let me just get something for now. Sometimes that something for now is a distraction to what your real purpose is supposed to be. Okay, so the best, and I'm going to give you a spiritual view, but the best starting point is to make sure that you're aimed directly at where you're supposed to be and you're not trying to take somebody else's job. And it doesn't even matter if you've been doing that job for 20, 30 years. It might have been somebody else's job you've been doing all that time. And it's time for you to step out of that spot and give it to them, and you get into your spot you're supposed to be in. Okay. So the first thing you do is you deal with your soul energy. A real simple way to do that is you can set up a little space for yourself, right? It's always good to start with your head. Okay, very light thing. Just you can get a bowl of water. You can put it in a calabash, or you can put it in a regular bowl. You don't do anything special, and you just want to chant over it exactly what you need, exactly what you're looking for, and not from the perspective of I want this job, because if you say what you want, then Spirit will say, okay, I'll create a situation where you'll want a job. You know, if you say, well, you know what, my purpose is to start a community center, and I really want to work with the elders. That's what I'm really here to do, is to start a center where young children and elders can come in and be serviced. So then your chance would be more so open up the pathways. You're sending not commands but directives, because you're the pilot of the ship. So any chant or affirmation you do always has to be directive based. One of the first things that you need to determine, and when I say pray, what typifies, let's say it will be your will. What typifies femininity? As a man, what typifies masculinity? If you have not personified that in your life, you're never going to create a healthy union. Okay, it's always going to be distorted. Now, one of the easy ways that I use as a guide, like because a lot of times you ask people, well, what is a man? What is a woman? There's a lot of stuttering. They really don't know. They may classify or categorize things that are common to males and common to females, but are you really dealing with someone who's passed through the veil of true maturity and adulthood and can say, I was a male, but now I'm a man, or I was a female, now I'm a woman? Okay, so one of the things that you want to start with is the basic genetic biology that makes a man or makes a male and make a female, right? So as a male, we know we have a phallus, a staff. As a female, you have a womb. Now, think about the properties of a womb and think about the properties of a staff. A healthy man will exhibit the properties of a healthy staff. He'll be expansive. He'll give seeds healthy seeds of thought that can grow into greater ideas. He'll be unbending. He'll be unrelenting. He'll always stand his ground. He'll always be ready to create, to build things. Okay, this is very simple. And for a woman, it's the same thing. She's receptive. She has the ability to take those seeds or to take information and expand it into something greater. It's like the saying, you give a woman a house, she'll give you a home. All you did was gave her a physical structure, but she created a spirit. That's actually what she did. A home is a spiritual entity. We call it, in Yoruba tradition, we call it Ile. And Ile gets libations and offerings just like